And thank you for welcoming me back to Aspen. I love this gathering because a lot of ideas flying around, but it seems like a lot of them also take root here. And that's what I wanted to say quickly before Walter and I have a discussion. I wanted to make a few comments to everyone about the essential economy. And how I would define that as everything that kind of gets built or moved or fixed. It's about a $12 billion economy in the US. It involves almost 100 million jobs. And it's really the backbone of our society. And it's important, but not everyone notices it until it doesn't work. I'm interested in this kind of work, this economy, because like so many Americans, I had a paper out, and I swept floors in a car shop. I put myself through graduate school at a car restoration shop. I still love working on my cars, no matter what my job is. I would just say it's kind of who I am and my friends. And when you spot a lineman in a bucket truck, or a plumber on a service call, or an EMT racing to the emergency, odds are they're driving a Ford. And so these are our people at our company too. And yet the essential economy is in a world of hurt, maybe more than most people expect. We're short 600,000 factory jobs, workers in the US, okay? Almost 500,000 construction workers, 400,000 auto technicians that work in dealerships to fix the cars that we all drive. And the white-collar productivity in the last few years has jumped almost 30%. Meanwhile, the productivity in this essential economy has actually fallen. So not only do we have a huge hole, the productivity is getting worse. And we can't ignore it on a personal level. A cracked bridge, or a blown transformer, or an understaffed construction site, they have a huge impact on our daily lives. And with so few people for these jobs, this is going to be painfully expensive to fix when it all falls apart. Meanwhile, obviously, AI, battery plants, they all seem really exciting, but they all need HVAC installers, they need electricians, they need welders. And in many of these boom towns around the country, half of the new jobs are these essential economy workers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics sees up to 60% growth in skilled trades. And if productivity in these sectors had simply matched our historical levels for the overall economy, our GDP would be 10% higher, and the average worker would be making about $5,000 more. So what do we do about it? Well, I think there's a couple pretty simple things, but they're hard to do. Modernizing permitting. In this country, it's very, very difficult to permit, and red tape is absolutely the bane of this economy. Rewiring our working people funding. We spend less on vocational, let me say this really carefully, we spend less on vocational training in our country than every one of our peer countries. And we aren't training for 2050, we're training for 1950. Robotics, AR, this is what plumber productivity needs to focus on. Just think about how cloud transformed coding, but we don't have the same plan for the essential economy. My dad grew up on the GI Bill. My grandfather was part of the WPA. We had the Ford Trade School, but these don't exist anymore. This is Ford. Henry Ford trained all of his workers, like my grandfather. They didn't know anything, but they were skilled, and they had a great future. And with all the AmeriCorps, it would be great to have something for the essential economy in our country. Ford's doing what we can. We're funding trade school scholarships, technician boot camps. We have financial support for people who want to go into the HVAC business if they're an HVAC professional, but we can't solve it ourselves. And the Idea Festival is that. And actually, I'm here for a specific reason. Talk to the EMT. Talk to the person in the booth. Ask them what their life is like, how they're trained, what are they going to do, what is the opportunity. And my only comment really is that we're going to bring the best thinkers in this area to Detroit this fall and have a get-together in Michigan Central Station, which if you haven't heard about, you should go do research on it. Because we want to really rev up this part of the economy, and we don't want to delegate it to someone else like the government or academia. We want to do something ourselves at Ford. My grandfather's Emmett Tracy. That's a picture of him in 1918. He was a 389th employee at Ford. He was an orphan. He didn't know his parents. He grew up in Dearborn. He rose through the ranks as an hourly worker. He had enough money to barely buy a dealership. And then he became a supplier for Ford. He worked until he was 95. And his Ford job put my mom through college. It really changed our whole life. So look around the room. At some point, almost all of your families came from these kind of jobs. Maybe it's one of your parents or grandparents. Maybe you worked a job like the essential economy, like I did. There's more than one way to the American dream. But our whole education system is focused on four-year education. Hiring an entry worker at a tech company has fallen 50% since 2019. Is that really where we want all of our kids to go? Artificial intelligence is going to replace literally half of all white-collar workers in the U.S. You know what job is, well, I mean, putting up that power line, building that factory, laying a new water system. Every day we see more and more stories in the news about people that are finding their own way into skilled trades. The new Harris poll even found that a third of Americans now would recommend trade school, prefer trade school over a traditional four-year college degree. We all sense that America can do better than we are doing. We need a new mindset, one that recognizes the importance of this essential economy and the importance to our vibrancy and sustainability as a country. So with that, I'd like to invite Walter up on stage, and we can have a conversation about this and some of the other things that's going on at Ford. Thank you, Walter.
Great.
Thank you.
You know, we opened Ideas Festival this year, Fareed Zakaria and myself, having a bit of a disagreement. I had said I came full circle from my original way of thinking about the global economy and that free trade was going to be a boon for everybody and free movement of people. And I came to the conclusion that we had to rebuild manufacturing and the essential economy here, and that even tariffs could be a part of that. How has your thinking evolved on things like that?
I would say similarly. You know, when I came into the business community, it was like free trade, and now I've worked all over the world in the auto industry for multiple companies, and I've seen so many countries put their foot on the scale of the economy and focus on local manufacturing. Japan, Germany, now China, and they created all these great jobs.
But the argument is that, well, we don't want to be a manufacturing company. It's a country, it's only 8% of the economy. We'd rather do the services and the software. Tell me what's wrong with that argument.
What happens if you have to defend yourself? Yeah. What happens, is Google going to make the tanks? Mm-hmm. You know, to be totally frank, we've forgotten a lot about that. And I think we've talked a lot about energy independence. We need to start talking about industrial independence. It's very, very important. People do not realize how dependent we are as a country on making things on other countries. We cannot get any high-powered magnets without China. We cannot
Is
get...
that hurting you, the high-powered magnet?
Yes, we shut down plants for the last 3 weeks because we cannot get high-power magnets. Go into your speakers in the audio system, your seats motors, your wiper motors, your door motors. And we can't make that stuff.
And so you think if we start putting at least moderate tariffs, we might rebuild an essential economy sector?
And also other countries do it. So we are fighting with our hands behind the back. In many cases, our competitors have $5,000 to $6,000 of incentive that they're exporting. Today, China has a 20 million unit market domestically, but they have 40 million units of capacity. They can export...
Wait, there's capacity for electric vehicles or
all vehicles.
Okay.
They don't have to build one more plant, and they can serve all of North America and part of Europe without any more plant. So we are in a global competition, and these jobs are really great jobs. A job at Ford is $150,000, $200,000. It's a transformational job for people's lives. And we have to really understand what it's going to take to not just have modest tariffs, to have an even playing field, like you said, but also to recreate critical minerals, battery raw materials, manufacturing grade semiconductors. Oh, it's so exciting. We have all these new semiconductor plants in Arizona. They're making advanced nodes for AI. But most of the silicon that goes into industrial products that we all buy are manufacturing grade. They're 10-year-old. That all comes from Taiwan and increasingly from China. We won't be able to make anything if we get in a serious...
How many trips to China have you made in the past year?
I would say 6 to 7.
6 to 7?
Yes.
And what are you seeing there that we should learn from?
It's the most humbling thing I've ever seen. 70% of all EVs in the world, electric vehicles, are made in China. They have far superior in-vehicle technology. Huawei and Xiaomi are in every car. They have facial recognition.
Meaning cell phone technology.
Yes.
Connected to their cell phone system.
Yes, you get in, you don't have to pair your phone. Automatically, your whole digital life is mirrored in the car. You have an AI companion that you can talk to, chat GBT equivalent in China to all the automatic payment is already there. You can buy movie tickets. It has facial recognition, so it knows who's in which seat and which media you like.
Wait, why don't Ford cars have that? Would you need to deal with Apple or?
Yeah, because Google and Apple decided not to go in the car business. And even beyond that, their cost, their quality of their vehicles is far superior to what I see in the West. I mean, we are in a global competition with China, and it's not just EVs. And if we lose this, we do not have a future, Ford.
Well, you did talk about EVs and how much they're doing there. To some extent, it seems that Ford is at least taking its foot off the accelerator for electric vehicles. Is that right?
I would say we're just changing our profile in line with demand. We've been number 2 to Tesla for 3 years, but we're also number 3 to hybrids, to Toyota and Honda, which people don't know. We're 80% market share on hybrids for trucks. The F-150, which is the best-selling vehicle in the United States for 47 years, 25% of all of them have a hybrid system. And why are people buying F-150 hybrid? Well, because ProPower on board. With a hybrid F-150, you can power your house for 6 days when the grid goes down. People are really interested in energy independent in Texas and Florida and California. So I would say we're putting more energy and more investment in hybrid, and we're redirecting our capital because we saw what happened in this first inning of EVs. We're going super affordable and commercial. We're not going to be investing in $50,000 to $60,000 SUVs, $30,000 EVs and commercial EVs, because that's where we think the market's going.
So super affordable. There aren't that many of them here in America.
No, there aren't. There's actually really none. And the ones that are here are kind of compliance vehicles. The manufacturer creates them to kind of create EV credits so they can sell trucks. They're not great cars and they lose a lot of money. So we have a Challenger project in the company, which hopefully we'll talk about publicly soon, where we're going to build the Model T of EVs with a small group of Skunk Works team in California.
Wow. So that's what Henry Ford would have had you do.
He did. When Henry Ford decided to democratize the V8 in 1932, he took 10 people and they quit the company. He put them in Greenfield Village and they developed 20 or 30 different versions of V8 until they settled on the one. They had to quit the company. Then when he got the design right, he threw it back into the industrial system at Ford, and we were the first one to industrialize a V8.
So if you have Skunk Works that could do a really affordable car, would you keep that in America?
Yes. We'll build it in America. It's been engineered in America. Our supply chain, though, this is one of the big debates about the tariffs. Look, I mean, it's $800 a month for an F-150 now. And, if we built every part here, not sure we could even, a wiring harness, fasteners. There's no suppliers in the U.S. But even if we did, it'd be $900 a month. So the tension on tariffs are, how do you find the right fair playing field but still make your vehicles affordable with import parts? So what I like to say is, hey, let's create a fair playing field for the finished vehicle. For parts, let us import parts from around the world. Let us keep Mexico stable in other countries. And that's what we're working through the administration on.
And when you say working through the administration on, how do you deal with them on understanding how tariffs should and could work and how supply chains and dealing with China and Mexico should work?
It's been an interesting process, a very intense one, with a lot of dialogue. I would say the president's priorities are very much in line with Ford. People don't realize half the cars in the United States are imported through a port or through a train or a truck. Half. About 20 years ago, it was 80%. And Ford makes 85% of all of our vehicles in the U.S. The biggest importer in the U.S. is our domestic competitor. When they went bankrupt, they fired more than 20,000 people in the U.S. We hired 15,000 since 2007. Now we have the most UAW workers. So yes, we are an outsized company. And Wall Street criticized us for building so much in the U.S. They said, you make more money, you make $1 billion more if you built more plants in Mexico. But we didn't really think that was the right thing for our country. And now we're in a better position than the others because we don't import, and we're also the #1 exporter.
But you think you can compete on the affordability field against BYD in China?
The key is innovation. To your point, we did our homework on BYD. They're the global leader in EV volume. And we found a lot of opportunities. Let's say it like that. I'll give you one example. American electric vehicles do not use LFP batteries. They're 30% cheaper. They can cycle twice. You can charge them twice as long in many cycles without deteriorating. But they are less energy dense. But there's almost no fire risk. They're real. And China bet on LFP. The West bet on these lithium batteries. And they have fire risk and they're very expensive. But they are more energy dense. So one of the things we bet on is to move to LFP for this affordable vehicle. But the IP is in China. So we had to localize the IP in Michigan, and that's very difficult. A lot of politicians focused on that. But we think that's the best thing for America.
So if you do LFP batteries, sorry to get so geeky on this, think of what Elon Musk is doing.
Yes.
It's not just for cars. You might use it.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say you're absolutely right because we have a lot of renewable energy now in our country, wind and solar, but they work sometimes and they don't work others. And there's a lot of energy storage that you need with this renewable, grid now.
And so Ford could get into the energy storage business?
We could repurpose our facilities take LFP technology and make energy storage batteries, not just EV batteries. And that's actually what Ford does. In COVID, we were one of the largest PPE producers. No one asked the engineers at Ford to do that. We just started making it. Within a week, we started making ventilators. In World War II, look what we did for our country. This is what we do at Ford, because they can't.
That great Henry Ford line when he talked about, giving the raise to the workers, and he said,
Yes.
they said that would be bad for the company. He said, no, these are our customers too.
That's right. He was the first one to pay everyone $5 a day. And it completely changed the immigration of our country. Detroit's a city it is now because of that $5 wage. And it transformed people's lives like Henry Ford, my grandfather. But he said, to your point, he said, I'm doing it because I want my factory worker to buy my cars. If they make enough money, they'll buy my own product. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. Yeah, I'm going to pay twice what someone else makes, but I want to have the best people, and I want them to be able to afford a house, a car. That's not a reality for. During the union negotiation, I did a lot of gemba, just going to our plants and listening. And the older workers who'd been at the company said, none of the young people want to work here, Jim. You pay $17 an hour. And they are so stressed. They got to work at Amazon for 8 hours. Then they come over to Ford for work for 7 hours. And then they sleep for 3 or 4 hours. And then they go back and they're barely getting by. So we took every temporary worker and made them full-time. It wasn't easy to do. It was expensive. But I think that's the kind of changes we need to make in our country. And it's not easy because there's a lot of pressure from the financial community.
Talk about that, because one of the things that's happened in the past 20 to 30 years has been that the definition of the economy is to get more wealth and growth. And it's you get the financial community, Wall Street, the funds, all pushing you just for that. Does Ford have a higher mission than just creating profits, and what would those be?
Absolutely. The Ford family is in their 6th generation. Wow. They don't toot their own horn, but Ford would not be Ford without the Ford family. In 2007, when our 2 competitors went bankrupt, we didn't. The employees said over and over again, I'm not going to let the Ford family down. I'll come in, I'll buy my own. They bought their own supplies. We burned the furniture to avoid bankruptcy. And part of that is because our mission is really, every company really believes in its mission. But I guess at Ford, our mission is more about what we do and not what we say.
Let's move into AI for a second, since it's been such, and start with real-world AI, which is basically autonomous driving, ADAS. And you were aiming at one point for level 4. I think you scaled back a bit.
We did.
Well, explain why you're moving away a bit from autonomous driving. Are you going to do like you did with the affordable vehicle and surprise us by leapfrogging and going ahead, maybe making a deal with Waymo or Tesla?
Good question. Autonomy is a really sexy and hard problem, as you know. You've written about it a lot. But at Ford, when Doug Fields came over from Apple and Tesla, he and I had a series of honest conversations about where do we want to make our bet. We don't have unlimited funds, and we decided as a company that a cooler problem than full autonomy in an urban setting was high speed, eyes off. Push a button and read a book in your car. Get 45 minutes.
That's only on highways.
Yes. And the highway is a hard problem, but not as hard as what you would say Waymo or Tesla are trying to do in the urban environment. But most Americans spend 20 to 30 minutes a day on the highway. And a lot of it is very dangerous, and a lot of people are distracted with their phones. And to make it safer and to free up time, in the short term, we did student body left. We took all of our level 4 funding, and we really focused on this problem, and we're excited to come out with that technology. At the same token, though, we are really excited about level 4.
Level 4 meaning what you'd call full self-drive.
Yeah, full self-driving with some kind of geofence. I think it's something that we're looking at really carefully.
You talk to my friend Elon?
Yeah. Yes, I won't go any further than that. But yeah, I think the progress that Waymo and
By the way, I didn't mean to call him my friend.
Yeah.
I just wrote a book about him.
Yeah.
I'm not his pal.
I would say we recognize that both of them have made a lot of progress, and this is now a
Meaning
scaling-
Waymo as well as
Yes,
Tesla.
yes, both of them.
Which one makes more sense to you?
To us, Waymo.
Because
We really-
it uses LiDAR?
Yes, we really feel for our brand, our people trust Ford. And when you have a brand like Ford, when there's a new technology, you have to be really careful. And we want to have a trusted brand, just like Mercedes and Volvo in the early days of Crash. And this is another wave of safety technology. So we really believe that a LiDAR is mission critical.
That's a
for
LiDAR, for
safety.
people who don't know, is sort of a light and radar system,
Yes.
not just a camera system.
It sends over 100 beams of light that bounces back, and you can see things, for example, a reflection on the back of a truck, or the sun in the camera's eyes, where the camera will be completely blinded, but the LiDAR system will see exactly
But you
what's
think
in
you
front of
will get to full self-driving in the foreseeable future somehow?
Yes, I do, but I think for us it'll be a partnership model. What we're really focused on, we just finished, I think, 40 million miles of hands-free, and it's kind of like a heated steering wheel. When you first use a heating steering, you're like, well, that won't be a big deal, and then you're on a cold day, you're like, wow, that's like pretty amazing. I feel warm. Hands-free driving is kind of the same thing. If you have you never tried Blue Cruise, go to a Ford dealer. When you let go of your hands on a highway, you're just like, oh my God, this is a lot more relaxing than cruise control.
But you race cars.
Yes.
You're taking your son, you told me, who's
Yes.
18, 17 years old, to North Carolina
Yes.
in a few days, so he can be a car driver, do
Yes.
sort of a NASCAR thing. What do you feel about, do people want to give up the experience of driving? Is there a room?
Well, that is a great question. I kind of think of driving as one of those things in our daily lives that you can master. And it's a very human thing to want to master something. Maybe walking, and maybe painting, and maybe reading. But driving, to me, is something that a lot of us take great pride in mastery. And it is a skill. And I actually worry about how much autonomy is the right level of autonomy before we start losing the basic skills of awareness in a car.
Wow, that's very interesting, because it just connects to one of the panels that just with AI making students lose the awareness of how to
Yes.
think through things. And
Yes.
stuff. So you worry that could happen with real world AI?
Deeply worry. I think driving cars is a life or death scenario. It is, and we have to be careful in this transition period. And I don't know how long it'll last. It could last decades and decades. And we have to be very careful. I believe very strongly in driving a car is a mastery event, and autonomy is fantastic. It can supplement a lot of the boring miles where people get distracted, but it can't substitute good driving. And we have a very serious driver monitoring system, and we struggle with this very problem. It's a very interesting and important design problem. How do you disengage and engage as the autonomy comes in and out of a driving experience? And will it, reduce the mastery of driving? It's something that, as a car company with our reputation, we have to be very careful about.
One of the things on your slide that just hit me was the productivity gains in white collar,
Yes.
if I'm doing it correctly, went up 40 some odd %. And that's largely due to technology. I mean, I think technology is defined by things that increase productivity. But for essential workers, it's declined.
Yes.
So what extent can AI increase the productivity of essential workers, or will it just wipe out those type of workers?
I think it will help a lot. But if I could take everyone here, on a run with one of our plumbers or electricians, you would have no idea how difficult their job is. Or if I took you into a Kansas City plant where it's 120 degrees today, putting on bumpers. And you have to do it perfectly every time. We only have 6 hours to build a Ford. It is a tough job. So AI will certainly help with, billing, with lots of menial tasks that distract.
What about
them.
robotics? What about hands-on tasks?
I think robotics will substitute quite a few jobs, but that will not fill the gap in what we're talking about. We're talking about millions and millions of people, openings for these jobs. A factory job is complicated, it's difficult, and so far maybe 10% of our operations can be roboticized. With the humanoid robot, maybe it's 20, but it's not going to be 80. And it will take a long time to get that kind of, because the cost of robotics is expensive. And humans are amazing. I see humans do things in our plant that a robot can't do. I remember at one of our plants in Germany, we had to figure out how to close the tailgate. And one of the workers on their weekend went out and bought a bicycle tire and wheel with a wooden slat. And with the kinetic force of the car going down the line, they just used the tire to close the rear tailgate. We could do that with a robot, but the creativity of someone, I'm not sure.
That gets to the essential question of our age when it comes to AI, which is whether it's going to be symbiotic, meaning humans and machines working together. The Ada Lovelace, 150 years ago, was the notion that there'll always be human creativity and its productivity will be increased by robotics and technology, or in her case, automated looms in the 1840s. And then the other school, which is that the robots will just replace us. If you're dedicated to your vision of the future, how do you take Doug Field and all your great people that have been at Apple and Tesla before and say, we want to use robotics to increase the creativity and productivity of our workers, not replace our workers?
I think it's really the essential question and why I'm here and why we want to do this in Detroit. I believe that AI and new technologies have an asymmetric impact on our economy. That means a lot of things are helped a lot and a lot of things are hurt. And when you look at these openings in our economy, it is very clear that all the technology we've seen has left a lot of people behind. AI will leave a lot of white-collar people behind. And we have to acknowledge that these new technologies are great. They'll make a lot of people's lives better, even people in the essential economy. But what are we going to do as a society for the people that it leaves behind, that are valuable humans, that require that for our society, we have to have a plan for sustainment. And we don't have that plan today.
Well, answer the question.
First,
what do we do?
First, I'm always amazed at what can happen when you retrain someone. I'll go to Van Dyke, our transmission plant that's now making electric motors. Those people my colleagues went from making automatic transmissions to complete digital motors. It took a lot of training and a lot of technology, and they are so excited about the future, but it required the company to invest heavily. And it's not just, enabling them with AI. It's making different things. So you have to have a plan to transition the team.
And we transformed our education system every time we go through an economic change like this, like the 1890s when your man Henry Ford invented the car, but Edison is inventing the light bulb. And so we made high school universal and free. So we were talking to Mike Johnson about what should we do to transform our training and education system?
Good question. I think we need to go back to the basics, to trade schools, and we need to have a society that doesn't look down on people like that. I have a podcast, and I interviewed a woman who has she mechanics like only women mechanics, because we have these hundreds of thousands of gap, and she's doing everything she can, but it's only her. We have to invest, companies like Ford, other companies, academic, Our governments have to get really serious about investing in trade schools and skilled trades. You go to Germany, every one of our factory workers has an apprentice starting in junior high school. Yep. Every one of those jobs has a person behind it for 8 years that are trained.
That apprentice system is amazing in Germany. Is there a way you could do that in Detroit?
Yes, but it's hard, but yes, you can do it. And we're starting. But Ford can't be the only one to do it. We need other companies. We need our country to get serious about this kind of problem. We need government programs. We need high schools to get falling in love with finding companies like Ford that can give these great apprentice jobs. It requires a kind of a complicated answer. But yes, Germany is amazing, and it is a great system.
I forgot to follow up earlier on when you surprised me by saying you've been to China 5 or 6 times. Tell me, are you trying to get a JV in China? Are you trying to buy BYD? Or what are you doing there? Mm-hmm. Well, this is off the record, so you can confide.
It's a secret. No, I go for a couple reasons. I bring my whole leadership team. We don't leave anyone behind. And the first thing we do is we get the last 100 cars that launch there, and we drive as many as we can. And then we pick the 4 or 5 that we love, and then we put them on a plane and fly them to Detroit.
Wow.
And then we drive the crap out of them, and we take them apart, and we put them back together.
And do you also do that with the Tesla and Waymo full self-driving? Do you download it and test it on your cars?
Of course, yes. And back to China, you know, people don't realize that China has IP that America needs. It has battery processing.
Should we just steal it the way they do to us? No, I'm sorry.
I think we just need to be more humble as a country that they do things really well that we need to learn. Mm-hmm. And how we learn is through joint ventures and cooperations and partnerships, but we can't be so obsessed with China's enemy that we aren't humble enough to set up those business structures and then have people in those companies, in those JVs, that transfer the knowledge and the know-how back to the home company, Ford. Without this kind of mechanism, you know, these kind of partnerships, and by the way, they need us. We have distribution systems. We have intimacy with our customers that they don't know. They don't know how to make quality in a lot of countries. We do after 120 years. So there's a lot we can offer them in exchange to enable them. But we have to be careful to kind of, it's too strong of a word, but kind of demonize them as a competitor, because there is such a thing as
Wait, I'm kind of hearing something there, which is maybe a small critique of the American political mindset now of demonizing China, slapping huge tariffs on them, thinking of them as the enemy. Would you urge more caution in demonizing China?
I would say how I like to think about it and how we've talked to leaders in Washington is that we need to understand that, just like I said, we need to understand that they do certain things very well, and we need to learn.
And if you tried to do a JV with them, would the Trump administration try to stop that?
I don't think so. Okay. I think they would, as long as it has the right guardrails, and it has the right guardrails, and we think about it the right way. I found very openness throughout the government and to do this, because I think they know it's required. And Ford is a trusted company. We've run our company a way that is different than others, but I think is more respectful in a way to the sustainability of our manufacturing base. And I think that matters. They will listen to us. And I found many politicians who are extremely respectful of that view.
This has been so fascinating. I've done the Aspen moderator sin of like taking up most of the time. So let me see if anybody has questions out there. And if not, I have many more. But there's microphones running, and yeah, there's a hand.
I'm curious, why would an apprenticeship program in the United States be hard? I run a not-for-profit development company and wake up every morning and worried that I'm not going to have enough HVAC or plumbers on our sites to finish jobs. So what do we need to do to make it easier?
It costs more. It costs more. And someone has to care about that person. That's the only thing. That's what makes it hard. We're so obsessed with saving money and making money that we have to invest in the next generation. And someone has to care. That plumber has to care about that person. Are we humble enough about displacing our own job to find that next person that will take our place? I think that's hard for many of us.
Yes, there. And I'm sorry, the light's in the eyes, so I'm missing some people. But
Mr. Farley, this presentation is very insightful. Thank you for that. It is very clear that we've been on a path of decoupling, certainly
yes.
on technology with China, and now potentially beyond that. But given what you just said in terms of your experience with China, if you were to drive our policy, what would be the perfect balance in developing our competitive relationship with China? Because we've gone so, aggressive in so many ways, and there is a widely held perception that China is our enemy now. How would you describe a potential right balance of relationship with China?
good question.
I see. I would say, first of all, we need to level the playing field. The companies have subsidies, free land, free taxes, and they export that advantage. I don't have that. So we need some kind, but the company needs to own our side, which is competitive product and competitive cost. So there's two sides of that. But we need a level playing field economically. And so we need some help. The second thing is people need to understand a car is not a 1980s car. It has cameras. It has microphones inside of it. It can be autonomously driven. And therefore, it's extremely, if you're apprehensive about a balloon, you should be very apprehensive about a modern automobile. So we need to have guardrails about how the data gets moved. It has to stay in a cloud in North America. It can't be used against us. We need to understand these cars are incredibly powerful technology. The average Ford has $3,000 or $4,000 of silicon in it now. So we need to have policies in our government for national defense and privacy to protect our citizens. And that is required, number two. Number three, we need to have a government policy that gets serious about this industrial independence. We need to be able to make battery and raw materials. A mine takes 20 years to approve in the US. Processing, forget about it. So we need to start building pilots, either in friendly countries or in our own country, to build raw materials that we're going to need for industrial independence now that we have our own energy independence. And then where there's IP, where we need that they have, we need to be open-minded, as I said, about getting that IP and working with them. It's just a reality. They have been investing in electric cars for 20 years. Mm-hmm. BYD has not been doing this for 5 years. Mm-hmm. They've been doing it for 20 years. We have to get ready. LFP technology, it's iron phosphate chemistry, was invented in the University of Texas. They bought it, and now they perfected it, and they scaled it. And now they make 70% of all the electric vehicles with LFP, and we need that technology here. And so it has to be localized. Batteries don't have cameras in them, So this is something we should be able to work with them and learn. I think those are the 4 key policy areas that need to be put in place.
Fascinating. Right here, and then the gentleman there, and then I saw you next. So we'll do those 3, and we may run out of time.
Thank you. This is a really fascinating conversation. I work in agriculture in California. We've lost over 4 million acres of farmland in the last 25 years there.
Yes.
Cost of labor have gone up 244%.
Yes.
So I'm really, really excited that Ford is taking a leadership role in this essential economy. And I would love to learn more this fall, like who's going to be there, what outcomes do you want, how do you bring more industries together? I'd love to hear your vision for that.
Yeah, I think we're working through it. I'm not saying it's like Farm Aid, but I think we'll do a good job to bring the biggest problems and the solutions focused to Detroit. I'm really excited about the ag business because you're very much in the same boat we are, and we have to be able to make our own food in the United States.
Right.
Excited to tell you more.
Right here, the microphone's on your other side, and we're running out of time, so quick question.
Hey, Mr. Farley, I'm a Bezos scholar, and my name is Sharia. I just wanted to, like you mentioned, the integral role that the trades play in the economy for our domestic security, as well as the dignity of that labor. So given that, I wanted to ask why it took Ford one of the most significant UAW strikes in decades to ensure that workers have better wages. And more broadly, I wanted to ask you, what role do you think unions play in the essential economy going forward?
Yeah, I think we need to be one of the key enablers to solve these problems. Simply put, we're not just going to hope it gets better. We have the resources and we have the know-how after 120 years to solve these problems, but we need more help from others. On the strike is a great question. No one has added more UAW jobs since '07 than Ford. We now have the largest UAW workforce, and we make more cars in the U.S. And I didn't understand the strike, to be honest. It was completely unnecessary.
Meaning from management perspective?
Yeah, I didn't understand why the UAW decided to strike our plant. It was unnecessary, as I said. We were more motivated than them to find a great contract. And by the way, we were the first company in both the U.S. and Canada to find an agreement. And Bill and I are super proud of that. But the strike was completely unnecessary.
Right here, and then I think we're going to let you end with what you want us to take away from
this. I just want to
this.
say thank you so much for the leadership that you've both displayed. One of the areas that China's done a great job is vertical integration
Yes.
and sort of really managing.
Yes.
It seems like a very big component for
Yes.
winning in
Yes.
the next version
You're
of
absolutely
the
right.
space. And in
Yes.
all transparency, I'm part of advancing manufacturing and making LFP here in America better, faster, cheaper. So very much part of the solution. But I'm curious on that bridging the gap from critical minerals to the vertical integration piece and how you're thinking about it, given that it's so critical.
Such an important topic. I would say anytime there's a new technology like EVs or software-defined vehicles, there's kind of, in 1928, when we did the Model T, Mr. Ford had this belief that we could scale the Model T so high that he could drop the price half every year and get people off horses and in the Model T. And then his suppliers, because he didn't have all the money to do that, his suppliers started making a lot of money because he would just take all the suppliers because he didn't have all the capital to vertically integrate. And then the Dodge brothers made our bodies. And the Dodge brothers went into competition with us, even though they were supplying our own bodies. And so in 1928, he said, enough of this baloney. I'm going to build the first vertically integrated manufacturing facility with iron ore from the Great Lakes, our own wood from our own forests, sand to make our own glass. And he did it in 1928 with the Model A. It saved our company. And since then, we have seen many times Elon Musk, BYD, all believe in vertical integration. The issue is when you're in the first and second inning, it's an advantage. But when you get in the third and fourth inning, your suppliers get good enough that you don't have to put all that capital at risk and all that employment at risk. You could spend your money on other things. And that is exactly what's happening now. So the dance we're doing is, what do we really need to do ourselves? And what can our suppliers do? I'll give you an example. In our country, there used to be 20 low-pressure casting companies. Now there are 2. Mm-hmm. So when I make a frame for an F-150, I got 2 choices. And if a private equity company buys one of them and tries to squeeze them for cash, and they have quality problems, I have 1. So Ford maybe should go back into low-pressure casting because it's just, we're too vulnerable. So it's a constant dance between vertical integration and capital efficiency. And whether it's technologies that are aging out or new technologies maturing. And it's been a factor in our industry for 120 years.
What do you want people to come away from this with? We'll let you in with that.
Really simply, there's a lot of great new technology to think about. But you need to think about it in its kind of disproportionate impact on our society. As a country, do we need a manufacturing base? Do we?
Yes.
Okay, if we do, for our society, then we better treat it with the respect it deserves, which we haven't.
Jim Farley, thank you.